Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Before we start, can we ask one thing? 74% of you that watch this channel frequently do not subscribe. If you've enjoyed our videos, please could you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the learning gets. Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Jonathan Herps is the host of the Business Focus podcast. He is a strategic advisor, coach, and mentor to entrepreneurial business owners, CEOs, and senior executives. In this podcast, he chats with entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies.
Today, it's my great pleasure to interview Peter Vines, who's Managing Director of Ray White Commercial, Western Sydney. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for having me.
And thanks so much for taking the time. So why don't we start with, I think most of us have heard of Ray White, but, what do you do? Where's your focus and how long have you been doing it for?
Ray White Commercial is a franchise business. We purchased the Western Sydney franchise about 4 years ago. So that's my wife Ruby and I who co-runs the business. And we have a focus across all asset classes in Western Sydney, as well as commercial leasing and a very big focus on property management as well. So across retail, commercial, industrial, and various other assets.
So when you say Western Sydney, big place.
It is a big place. It is. Typically sort of from the Anzac Bridge out to sort of the foot of the Blue Mountains, so Penrith.
That's huge.
Back to Macquarie Park and then down to sort of Campbelltown.
Oh, that's an enormous footprint.
It is. And it's, with all the infrastructure growth in Western Sydney, it's, there's a lot happening.
Very much so. So tell me, how would you describe your core, your best client, your best customer?
How would I, what, sorry?
How would you describe your core customer, your best customer?
When I first started in commercial real estate in Western Sydney, my goal was to build relationships with clients who did repeat business every year. And that started in the not-for-profit space. And that then moved into sort of seniors living and aged care, as well as, various funds and other similar businesses, developers, where I could build a relationship with the key stakeholders within those business. They were constantly either ramping up or ramping down. And so they had a need to transact real estate with somebody who knew their business and who understood them, but also who they felt comfortable with, that would, represent their best interests and get them the best result.
Okay. Now, your timing was interesting 4 years ago. So what you took over the franchise just before the pandemic, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It was an interesting time. Yeah.
So tell me, how did you handle that? And what are some of the actions that you took during the pandemic that have remained with the business?
Yeah. At the time it was sort of, everybody was pretty concerned, and we, like everybody else, nobody really knew what kind of was going on or what was likely to transpire. Ray White as a group were hugely beneficial in terms of their kind of, communication around the plan to get through the pandemic and what that might look like. But for us, it was really, very much just we got through that initial period of fear, and then it sort of started to really kind of ramp up, and, we're incredibly busy. As part of our business, we are, we're all cloud-based. We work with G Suite. So the fact that nobody was able to come into the office was not an issue, because we were already cloud-based in everything that we did. I think the benefit, for us in terms of reaching mass markets through Zoom calls or, whatever it is something that's certainly hung around. I mean, we used to hold events, and you turn up, or take up of those events. Might be 50% that turn up from having reserves, and then you've outlaid substantial amounts of money. You've outlaid all sorts of things to have people there, and then one thing or another comes up, and you don't have that ability. So we have the ability to host events online and really educate people online at no cost. And so it's like yourself, there's this enormous opportunity to kind of educate and add value to people's world, particularly, our clients, which is a huge opportunity for us. The other thing that was apparent to us was we needed to keep building a business that created annuity. So property management for us is that annuity. It just every month, while tenants are paying rent anyway, just sort of, ticks over in the background. COVID was an extremely difficult time for property managers, particularly dealing with, the government legislation around rebates, and, it was a very difficult time with lots of, uncertainty. But I think they were some of the bigger takeouts from the COVID period. We continued to work in the office as much as possible. We didn't stop working in the office as we were a service that was allowed to continue. Our business desire is to have everybody who works in our business based in our office, and that's on a full-time basis. Our feeling is that, we have a fantastic culture in our business, and that's one of the ways that we retain talent, whereby if people are, able to just work from wherever, or they can't work at home. And look, I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but particularly for our business, we're acutely aware that our culture is what people buy into. And if you're only competing on a dollar for dollar basis, it's much more difficult to retain talent, and people are always looking for the next thing.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point. The conversations I'm having with my clients about fully in the office, a hybrid versus the fully remote. It's they're interesting conversations. They really are. What suits each individual business.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, we are an industry and a business that feeds off energy. And so, you don't get that energy necessarily, working from home.
Yeah, it's a good point. So interesting, in the last 2 weeks, I've actually got together with a couple of my CEO clients and their leadership teams for the first time ever, because of COVID and Zoom and everything else. We haven't actually met face to face, even though they've been clients for over 2 years. It's been a really interesting time. So tell me, what does the future look like, and what do you see as your main challenges moving forward?
Firstly, I'd say the future looks very bright. Look, I think, we're obviously in a more challenging environment at the moment, given, interest rates and I guess a global kind of marketplace which is full of uncertainty. Both our neighbors in China, but then also in Europe, and then into the United States as well. So I think, there's certainly some headwinds from an economic perspective. But, there's always going to be challenges in the economy. Real estate's about cycles. So they're sort of probably they're the things that we can't really do too much about. We can only kind of control our business. But I think certainly Western Sydney is an area of considerable growth, and there's an enormous opportunity out here for us as a commercial business, as an alternate to the more institutional style commercial real estate businesses that are out here. We offer a real alternative, particularly for those private high net worth owners, where they would be the majority of market owners. There's sort of the institutional clients that are up here, and then there's everybody else underneath. And so there's a major opportunity for us out here. The biggest challenge, I think, in any industry is talent. And it's retaining talent, but it's finding talent, it's training talent. And it's really, these are, no matter what industry you're in, finding good people who want to work hard, who also culturally align with where you want to be as a business, is the greatest challenge of all, because they make or break your business. And our clients are obviously incredibly important to us, but our people are equally as important to us, because they're the ones at the end of the day who make things happen. And so I think that our big challenge to ourselves is to acquire talent of more sophisticated senior personnel, but also there's this whole education process and raising up those next leaders for the future who will come in and fit into the business and be able to kind of grow with us as we grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I challenged one of my clients last week and their leadership team as to what is the key metric in what do they see as a key metric in their business, and they're all coming up with all these different ideas. And I just at the end of the day, I said, well, what percentage of your team are, as I would describe it, A players, high on corporate values and cultural fit and high on productivity in their role. And as I said to them, if the number is less than 90%, well, there in fact is the key metric for any business and any CEO.
Absolutely. And I feel like we can constantly be improving. We can constantly do better at what we are doing. But it all comes down to, particularly, the barrier to entry for a commercial real estate agent is relatively high. We're dealing with some incredibly sophisticated business people, but also property people as well. And so unless you have the ability to speak at their level and add value to them, it's very difficult to sort of, work in this world.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So tell me, what has been your biggest learning since you've been a business owner?
Don't try and do everything yourself. No, I think self-awareness, I think, is an incredibly important thing. And I know that there's parts of the business that I'm very strong in, but there's also a process and HR and a whole lot of other things that perhaps aren't my strong suit. And so it's really making sure that you have kind of key players in each of those fields so that you are not trying to do everything. Obviously there have to be people who you trust and align with where you are culturally and from a commercial perspective. But it's really, I think, play to your strengths. And that's sort of, worked well for us to date, is really that getting the right people for the right roles. And it was incredibly difficult during, COVID to get those right people. But we have got the right people now in those right positions, which just, has seemed to have, projected us even further.
That's a great point. I talk to my clients about the concept of your unique ability. What are you really good at doing and what do you really love doing?
Yeah.
And you should do that and delegate everything else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And find people with those unique abilities. It's like this podcast.
Yeah.
Way in the world, I'm going to try and edit this, or apart from the interview, the actual questions and talking, this our discussion, everything else is outsourced.
Yes.
We're far better at it.
Yeah.
No, it's a very good point. So tell me, when you think about the word successful, who comes to mind and why?
There's a lot of people out there, obviously. Look, I think the first person who popped into my mind was Harry Triggerboff. He's an incredible person, an incredible success. arrived in the country with virtually nothing from a war-torn country, and has, gone on to show that, if you work hard and you're strong and you're persistent and you have smarts, then you can obviously go a very long way. I mean, he would be, kind of right up the top of that. There's obviously people at varying levels who I have a huge amount of admiration for in various areas, both from a general corporate perspective, but also from a commercial real estate or a real estate business professionals that have built, really kind of solid businesses. And I guess, that's certainly, from a professional sense, the sorts of people who I look to.
So just to round that out, Harry Trickerboff is the founder of Meriton, a property development company, multi-billionaire, but has started from scratch as a refugee and has built this extraordinary business.
Yes, yeah, it's just unbelievable. What he's been able to create.
Yeah, totally agree. And you're the first person out of 85 interviews to mention Harry Trickerboff, so that's great. Are you a reader? Do you listen to podcasts, business autobiographies? Anything you'd recommend?
Look, I spend a lot of time reading documents for work, and so when I'm not doing that, I enjoy listening to audiobooks. I enjoy autobiographies of various people. I listened to the Prince Harry one recently, which was which was an interesting one, which wasn't necessarily something that I would typically listen to. But people like the Steve Jobs autobiography, or the gentleman who was the CEO of Disney, Bob.
Oh yeah, Iger. Yep.
Bob Iger was. I'd like, for me, those books are incredible, and it was particularly Bob Iger. I mean, it was a pivotal moment in their business history, and it was, who are we as a brand? And I think that there's a lot that we can learn from other people's experience in terms of those pivotal moments in business where you really need to understand who you are as a business, but where you want to go, and then what you need to get there. And really that book in particular, talked about Disney becoming a media company. It was a media company that then, used those media tools to, do the theme parks and the branding and the merchandising and all of those things. But it was going out buying Pixar, it was going out buying Marvel. And I just, I think that was genius. And I think it was really the pivotal moment for them as a business, and making sure that they went down the right path.
And isn't it interesting that there he is, retired, 2 years out, and Disney's now brought him back as a CEO again.
Yeah, it speaks volumes.
It does say a hell of a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, last question for you. Any last piece of advice or parting words for listeners, entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs?
Look, I would put myself in the aspiring entrepreneur department. I mean, I certainly, we have an idea of, where we want to go as a business. And I think it's, the thing that I have learned is that if you have an idea of where you want to go, for us, it's really about, it doesn't matter whether it's next year, 3 years time, 5 years time. If we put energy into a certain direction where we want to go, we will get there. I think, there's a huge amount of pressure on timing, which, look, for some businesses is critically important, but for me, it's a long game. And I think that if you have a very strong vision of where you want to go and just keep, plugging away every day, putting energy into that direction, that things happen, and they, have a way of working themselves out and getting you in line with where you're going with that energy. And so I think it's really, know where you want to go, but also, it's maybe not as important when you get there, but that you get there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Perseverance is one of those, it is one of the most critical
elements of success.
I think I totally agree. And as you say, having a vision. With the third piece in there, don't be scared of failing.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I've really enjoyed the conversation. As always, I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Jonathan.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please leave us a review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you watch/listen. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in this topic. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to admin@scaleupgrowth.co. Put "Be a guest" in the subject line and tell me a little about yourself. If you want to gauge where your business growth potential is and identify where the biggest opportunities in your business lie, or where the key needs that you need to concentrate on right now are, take our assessment where you will receive personalized advice for improvement. It's quick and free. Go to scaleupgrowth.scoreapp.com. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, I love coaching and get the best outcomes that way. Send me an email to jonathan@scaleupgrowth.co and put one-to-one in the heading. Tell me a bit about your business and let's see how we can apply a great strategy for your business. So that's it for this week. Tune in next time for more great learnings from a scaling entrepreneur.